Before power was measured in market share, it was measured in territory. Let's review the ultimate strategists. The question leaders face in crisis is simple and paralyzing. Do I follow the plan or do I adapt to what I'm seeing? Most organizations choose the plan. They assume the plan is right. When conditions change, they execute the plan anyway, just faster or harder. This usually fails. The alternative is pure improvisation. Abandon the plan entirely and react to each moment. This creates chaos. No coordination, no coherence. The organization fragments when it needs to be strongest. History shows a third path. The best military leaders navigated volatility through something called strategic maneuver. Not plan abandonment, not plan rigidity. Strategic maneuver, a different kind of planning. Strategic maneuver means identifying the decisive point in a chaotic situation and redirecting force there. It means having enough organizational flexibility to concentrate resources where they matter most in the moment. This required something counterintuitive, the ability to abandon the secondary parts of a plan to preserve the capacity to win the critical part. Most modern organizations cannot do this. Modern organizations face unprecedented volatility. Markets shift, technologies emerge, competitors pivot, plans made a year ago no longer match reality. Yet the organization executes them anyway. The cost is enormous. Resources are wasted on actions that no longer matter. Opportunities pass unrecognized because attention is locked on the original plan. The assumption is that changing plans mid-course is a sign of failed leadership, that adaptation looks weak, that the strong leader sticks to the plan. This assumption is backwards. In volatility, the leader who recognizes that conditions have changed and redirects effort is the one who wins. The leader who stays the course often loses. But pure reaction is equally dangerous. An organization that changes direction every day fractures, coordination collapses. The question is, how do you balance consistency and adaptation? The answer is strategic maneuver. Keep the objective stable, change the method of achieving it. This is what historical military strategists discovered through centuries of warfare. Strategic maneuver is not a new concept. Clausewitz, the Prussian military theorist, articulated the principle in the 19th century, but it applies far beyond military strategy. Clausewitz observed that war never goes according to plan. Conditions change. Intelligence proves incorrect. Enemies adapt. Yet the best commanders still achieved victory. How? They did not abandon the objective. They abandoned the plan, or rather they held the plan lightly. They focused on the objective. They adapted tactics to conditions. The gap between objective and tactics is where maneuver happens. Clausewitz introduced the concept of the center of gravity, the point in a situation where concentrated force produces the greatest effect. In military terms, it might be the enemy's supply line. In organizational terms, it might be customer retention. The principle is universal. In any crisis, there is a critical point where effort produces disproportionate effect. Strategic maneuver is recognizing that point and concentrating force there. Later, Napoleon demonstrated this principle through decades of campaigns. Napoleon moved armies rapidly across Europe, often outnumbered, yet he consistently defeated larger forces by concentrating superior numbers at the decisive moment. Napoleon did not have better soldiers than his opponents in every battle. He had equal or fewer soldiers often. What he had was the organizational capability to concentrate them where they mattered most. This required something modern organizations rarely develop, the ability to strip resources from secondary operations rapidly and concentrate them at the critical point. This is maneuver capability. How does this capability work? It starts with clarity. The leader must be able to identify the center of gravity, the point where concentrated effort determines the outcome. This is harder than it sounds. In crisis, there are multiple urgent demands. Every department believes its challenge is the center of gravity. The leader must distinguish true crisis from noise. Once identified, the second requirement is authorization, the power to redirect resources from elsewhere without consensus. If each department can veto resource removal, maneuver is impossible. This is where organizational structure matters. If authority is distributed such that many can block decisions, maneuver slows. By the time consensus forms, the critical moment has passed. Napoleon maintained centralized authority to enable rapid maneuver. A general in the field could not argue with Napoleon's reallocation of troops. This was not tyranny, it was functional necessity. The third requirement is speed. Information about the critical point must travel to decision makers rapidly. Decision making must be fast. Resource reallocation must execute quickly. Delay at any step undermines maneuver. The fourth requirement is organizational reserves. You cannot concentrate force at the decisive point if every resource is already committed. Some capacity must be held in reserve, uncommitted, waiting for the critical moment. This creates a permanent tension. Reserves are expensive. They sit idle when used for stability operations. Yet without reserves, maneuver becomes impossible. Rome understood this. It maintained legions dedicated to rapid response. The fifth requirement is clear communication. When a maneuver order comes, every unit must understand what is happening. Units being stripped must cooperate. Units receiving reinforcements must exploit them immediately. Napoleon achieved this through personal command and a culture of execution. When Napoleon ordered a maneuver, subordinates moved. No one questioned, no one delayed. This cultural element is essential, but culture alone is insufficient. Information systems matter. How does the commander know which point is decisive? Intelligence, scouts, reports from the field, information networks are maneuver infrastructure. A critical distinction. Maneuver is not reckless. It is not throw everything at the problem. Maneuver is surgical. Identify the critical point, concentrate measured force there, hold everywhere else. This means accepting risk. When you concentrate force at the decisive point, other areas become vulnerable. You are betting that success at the critical point outweighs losses elsewhere. This bet must be calculated. Napoleon calculated these bets continuously. At Austerlitz, Napoleon weakened his center deliberately to draw enemy forces there. Then he struck the weakened flanks. The weakness was intentional. It enabled victory. The mechanism is this. Maintain organizational clarity about what is truly critical. Hold decision authority centrally. Keep organizational reserves and execute reallocation rapidly when the critical moment appears. Where does this system fail? When the crisis point is misidentified. If the leader concentrates force at the wrong point, maneuver becomes wasteful and the organization loses. This requires judgment. No formula identifies the decisive point perfectly. Information is incomplete. Prediction is uncertain. The leader must make decisions without perfect data. Another limitation, maneuver takes time. While force is concentrating, adversaries can move. If the reallocation is too slow, the advantage is lost. Speed is prerequisite for maneuver. A third boundary, maneuver requires organizational slack. A fully optimized, lean organization has no reserves. Lean works during stability. It prevents maneuver during crisis. A validating case, the Napoleonic Wars. At Jena Auerstedt, Napoleon defeated two separate Prussian armies by concentrating force against one, defeating it rapidly, then maneuvering against the other. The Prussians, fully committed, could not maneuver. Napoleon could. Another case, Waterloo. Napoleon faced allies. He attempted to concentrate force and break the British line before Prussian reserves arrived. He nearly succeeded. He failed not because maneuver was wrong, but because his maneuver was slightly too slow. Important limitation. Maneuver assumes you have identified the center of gravity correctly. If you concentrate force at the wrong point, you guarantee loss. This is maneuver's central risk. What does maneuver enable? Victory in conditions where planning would produce stalemate. Organizations able to maneuver outperform organizations locked into rigid plans. Market example. A company identified a sudden shift in customer preference. The competitor that could rapidly reallocate engineers to the emerging category won market share. The competitor that executed the original plan lost relevance. Maneuver enables speed advantage. In volatile markets, the ability to identify the critical shift and respond faster than competitors determines winners. This is not theoretical. This is survival. Maneuver also enables resilience. An organization that cannot maneuver faces only two options: succeed according to plan or fail. An organization that can maneuver has a third option. But maneuver is not costless. Maintaining reserves costs money. Centralizing authority can cause resentment if leaders feel over-controlled. The organization must consciously accept these costs. To the opening question, do you follow the plan or adapt to what you're seeing? The answer is maneuver. Follow the objective, adapt the plan, concentrate force at the critical point. This requires different capabilities than stability leadership. It requires information networks. It requires reserves. It requires centralized authority. It requires a culture of rapid execution. Most organizations optimize for efficiency and stability. They strip reserves. They distribute authority. They slow decision-making to ensure consensus. These optimizations prevent maneuver. The trade-off is explicit. The question for modern leaders: what kind of crisis might your organization face? If volatility is likely, you must accept the cost of maintaining maneuver capability. Planning alone is insufficient. The principle applies beyond warfare. Any organization facing volatility needs maneuver capability. This means consciously maintaining organizational reserves and centralized response authority. Reserves can be financial reserves, personnel reserves, or production capacity held in reserve. Reserves are expensive during stability, but they enable response during crisis. Centralized authority does not mean authoritarian management. It means that during crisis, decision-making concentrates at the top for speed, even if the culture is normally distributed. Information networks are prerequisite. You cannot maneuver without knowing what is happening. Organizations must invest in early warning systems, market sensing, customer feedback systems that inform the center rapidly. Cultural preparedness matters. If people have never experienced a rapid reallocation order, the chaos will be immense. Organizations should drill maneuver scenarios in advance. The modern application is this: identify in advance what crises might require maneuver. For each potential crisis, determine what the center of gravity would be. Plan the maneuver in advance, even if the plan will change when crisis hits. This advanced thinking accelerates real-time response. It trains people to think in maneuver terms. The final principle: accept that in volatility, some planned activities will be abandoned. This is not failure, this is maneuver. The organization that abandons secondary plans to win at critical points survives. A rigid plan in volatility is a rope around an organization's throat. The ability to identify the critical moment and concentrate force there is what separates survival from collapse. The throne changes, the strategy remains. Until next time.